1. Being in the logical, corporate world, there's hardly any space for ghost stories and theories. However, this one I can't ignore. I'm a 27-year-old man, work as an operations manager for a multi-service company. I work on the 17th floor of a massive high-rise office building in the middle of town. Most days I waste away with my spreadsheets and inventory, passing the day in front of my computer. Other days I actually visit my sites and talk to my staff. The building I am in has staff of mine in it, but only 4 of them, so I rarely see them, as they are generally on other floors hard at work. Only after 2 weeks of being with the company did I realize that 3 floors of the building have no tenants. Just 800 square meters of empty, dark rooms with thin walls and dark blue carpets. Each floor has 3 bathrooms, male, female, and paraplegic, which we service only once a month, if there are no tenants in the floors. All seemed normal until one day my elevator ride from my office floor to the ground was unintentionally stopped on one of the empty floors. I poked my head out of the elevator thinking there was someone getting on, only to notice we had stopped on floor 14, the uninhabited floor. My body went cold as I stared into the empty hallway, noticing nobody around. I crept back into the elevator and looked at the buttons to see if I accidentally pressed it. Nothing. The only floor glowing was the ground floor. Strange. I pressed the close doors button, but the elevator wouldn't close. I began to panic. I stepped out of the elevator and pressed the outside button, hoping another elevator would show up. I stood quiet for a moment and watched as the elevator I had just exited started to close, and I was just not quick enough to grab the doors. There I stood alone in the dark next to the empty office, and the eerie sound of the wind blowing against the building. I bolted for the fire escape stairs when I heard it, the chilling sound of a bathroom stall door closing in the female toilets. I stopped for a moment and turned to face the bathroom. The door was slightly ajar and wind was blowing through it. I was immediately horrified. You see, the door is one of those hydraulic doors that closes on its own. Someone had to be holding it open from the inside. I panicked and ran out the fire escape doors, down the stairs all the way to the ground. In a huff, I ran to security to go back up to the floor and check out the bathroom. The security thought I had gone mad as the floor was empty and just assumed someone from another office had come down for a more private bathroom break. We got to the floor and walked around. Nobody in the women's bathroom, nobody in the men's. Who could it have been? I asked. Security said they would check the tapes and get back to me. What really creeped me out is that all the stall doors were locked. Maintenance hasn't locked them, as there are no tenants. A few days passed, and I had completely forgotten about the experience, back to my normal programming of sitting behind my desk and focusing on the logical processes of my day-to-day. Late Friday afternoon, I got a knock on my door from 3 of the security, asking me to confirm my story from a couple of days ago. I explained myself again and told them what I had seen, and they stared at each other in a rather weird manner. I asked them what was going on, and they explained to me the following. Nobody came to the floor. The security footage didn't catch anyone on the floor. Not even me. I stood in silence. Sir, are you sure it was floor 14? I was certain of it. Each floor has a sign. They assured me they checked each floor to see where I'd popped up, but nothing. Here's where it gets more intense. There are tapes of me walking out of the elevator on the ground floor, normal and mundane. I asked the security to see the footage myself, and that's when I saw it. On the top right corner of the camera, facing the doors of the office on floor 14, the face of a woman. I know she's there, and she knows I exist. I've lost 17 kilograms in the last 2 months, as I no longer take the elevators. 2. First off, I believe people have the right to worship however they choose, and are welcome to whatever faith and beliefs they have. But when I was a young man, I was shown the truth and have understood since that God is very real. As a boy, I went to church every weekend with my grandmother. It was something that was normal and expected without complaint. But being the pre-teenager that I was, I grew bored and restless. It was the summer of 2002, and I was 12 years old. I was staying with my grandmother, and as it was her house, there wasn't very much to do. I asked my grandma if my friend Michael could stay the night one evening. She agreed. Michael and I began the night watching TV, laughing, joking, and carrying on. It was around 10 p.m., and while flipping through the channels, we stopped on the channel of a priest who was conducting a Catholic Mass. We began discussing the possibility that maybe God wasn't real. Having doubts, we determined that there was no real proof, and concluded that he obviously wasn't real. Maybe an hour or so later, we decided to go on a walk to my cousin Emily's house, because Michael had a crush on her. It was around 1 mile away, and we were so bored, so it seemed like an easy decision. It was a warm summer night, there was no wind, everything was calm. The temperature could only be described as comfortable. We arrived at Emily's house. Her and Michael began teenage flirtatious talking. I decided to give them some space. So I went and sat on the curb and pulled a Pepsi out of my pocket. I remember drinking the Pepsi on the curb and thinking it was such a peaceful night. Approximately 30 minutes later, Michael said goodnight to Emily and met me at the curb. We decided it was time to head back home to my grandma's. We started walking down the dark street, and after about 30 feet we stopped. Something was off. I could feel it, and so could Michael. It's hard to describe, but something had changed in the air. There was a certain discomfort that I can only describe as the feeling of being watched. I looked at Michael, and he said to me, "I feel it too." As we slowly proceeded forward, we began to notice things. There was absolutely no wind or breeze, yet wind chimes all over the neighborhood were ringing like crazy. It was very odd, and they all seemed to be ringing at once. All of the dogs in the neighborhood were barking like crazy, which may not seem so strange. If one dog starts barking, others are likely to join. But it was a weird coincidence, in combination with the wind chimes. We were moving very slowly now, and we were both positive that something unnatural was happening. We started seeing movement in our peripheral vision. Not fast and aggressive, just shadows we would catch in the corner of eyes. That was just the beginning. I remember being halfway home when we stopped. We were about 3 houses away from my friend Tyler's house. A sort of childlike excitement rushed through me. I wanted to see more, Michael did not. He just kept telling me he wanted to go home. We stood on that street for a few minutes discussing everything we just witnessed. Then out of nowhere we noticed something very eerie. It was a voice. It was singing in the distance. It was like it was echoing far away in the sky, and we could hear it so distinctly. A little boy's voice singing, "Michael, Michael, Michael." I can't really describe the feeling in words. It was very eerie, yet I didn't feel like I was in danger. This voice continued singing for approximately 1 minute, over and over again, chanting Michael's name. I went up close to Michael, being the excited little boy I was, and noticed Michael was being very quiet. As I approached, I noticed he was in tears. He looked at me and said, "I want to go home now." I realized I was being selfish and he was upset, so we immediately made our way back to my grandma's. Nothing else occurred on our way back. I spent the rest of the walk contemplating why this just happened to us, and Michael spent the rest of the walk silent. Once we were inside my grandma's house, it hit me. I shouted at Michael. This all happened because we challenged God. He gave us a sign tonight. Michael looked at me with the most pale face I've ever seen him wear, and said, "I know what that voice was singing," he said. "It was my friend Chris. He was my best friend and one of my neighbors. 2 years ago he died in a swimming accident at the lake." I proceeded to ask him more questions, but Michael stopped me. He looked at me and said, "I never want to talk about this night again, never bring it up." Throughout the next few years, Michael and I grew apart. We remained in contact sparingly, but any time I decided to mention that night, he would denounce what I was talking about, shrug it off, or change the subject. It just so happened when I was 15 years old, my mother purchased a house. I remember going there for the first time and realizing this is odd as I pulled up to the house. I recognized the street. My mother purchased the house right next door to Michael's. I was all excited to go and tell Michael I was going to be his next-door neighbor and all the good times we were going to have. Michael seemed to have some high spirits as well. The next several years passed. I was an adult man now, 23 years old, with a 3-year-old little girl. I would often visit with my mom and daughter. She played in my mom's house fairly often and would stay the night, but my mom would tell me my daughter would say things. Things like she was playing with a little boy in her room, and there's a boy who talks to her. This went on for months, and my daughter started telling me about the boy as well. One day, I happened to be visiting my mother as Michael was visiting his parents. I went outside just to catch up. It's been a long time since I'd seen Michael, and he had his own family now. We talked about life, our jobs, kids, etc., until I decided to bring up my daughter and the little boy. Yet again, Michael's face went pale. He looked at me and said, "Do you remember what happened when we were kids?" I immediately knew what he was referring to and said yes. He mentioned, "I told you about my neighbor friend who drowned in a swimming accident, and his name was Chris." Again, I responded with yes. He looked at me again and said, "Well, you're living in his house." 3. If anybody knows what is haunting my house, please let me know. I frequently attract ghosts to myself, and I tend to have the most activity amongst any other persons that I live with. A backstory unrelated, because I have ADHD, I consider myself to have some sort of power, due to the fact that I have dreams sometimes that come true. One night I had nightmares. Somebody was trapped in a car and screaming for help. The following night my mom got a phone call at 11 at night. It was her best friend, and I got up and got dressed without a word and went over to my mom, and she was hanging up the phone, and I said, "Was that your friend?" She said yes. Now her friend's daughter was one of my friends from high school. I said my friend was in a car accident on her way home from work, wasn't she? My mom was terrified because that was the phone call that she had gotten. My friend's car had flipped upside down and she was trapped. She is fine now, just to clarify. My house was built in 1901, and is one of the first few thousand homes to be built with electricity and lighting. I live not far from where Edison started implementing electricity back in 1882. Since moving into the house a year ago, we've had lots of weird phenomena. We've had a spiritual friend who will not touch the 3rd floor, which is where we found a death certificate of the man who first owned the home. He also died in this home. That being said, we don't believe that there are any other deaths in the home. Now on to the scary ghost stories. Back in May, our cat was acting really strange for a few days. One night I saw her sitting at the end of our hallway, and I looked at the other end of the hallway, and she was laying sleeping on the bed. When I looked back, the other cat was gone. In July, I was sitting on our sofa, and my cat was asleep in my lap. I heard what sounded like somebody sitting on the couch cushions beside me, and I watched as the cushions sank like somebody was sitting on them. The cat had immediately woke up and was making a low, threatening growl, and then the cushions went back to normal, so whatever was sitting there stood up and left. Then last month, one night, I had a recurring nightmare. The nightmare was that I woke up, and standing above me was a little girl maybe 4 or 5 years old. She was in a black dress, and she had long black hair, and her skin was a pale, deadly gray-blue color. Her hair was also dripping wet along with her dress. In the nightmare, when I woke up, she was standing above me and proceeded to try to suck my soul out of me. After the nightmare repeated 4 times, I got up and went to go sit in our reading room on the chair directly across from the bottom of our stairs. I was sitting in the dark, watching YouTube on my phone, when I started hearing dripping sounds on the landing of the stairs. I looked up and she was standing there looking at me. I glanced down at my phone and turned my flashlight on, but she had disappeared. Now we get to last night. I had fallen asleep upstairs in our living room, on a chair that was in the house when we bought it. I kept hearing a woman softly speaking in a sickening sweet voice, "Wake up," maybe 5 or 6 times. When I bolted awake, my ears were ringing and the lights were flickering. The ringing was so bad that I couldn't hear for a solid 30 seconds, and then everything stopped. I went downstairs to bed, but couldn't shake the feeling, so I laid and played on my phone beside my boyfriend. About an hour later, he bolted upright in bed and looked around frantically and was panting heavily like he was scared. About 15 minutes later, he did the same thing again. Now, he doesn't remember any of this happening. About an hour later, I went back out to our reading room, and the cat went up the 3 stairs to the landing and was staring up at the top of the stairs. I tried to get her attention, but she would not stop staring. Then she did it again, that low, threatening growl. After that, I was officially terrified. Last night was the last straw for me. This ghost needs to go. Someone please help me figure out what it is, so that I know how to get rid of it. 4. I'm writing this to get my thoughts in order about what happened as a kid. My husband doesn't believe any of this. He is scared of anything paranormal. I want to write this out since he won't listen, and I don't want to tell people I know about this. I am 30 years old. I grew up in a log house. I shared a room with my siblings until I was around 10. My older brother had night terrors and would sleepwalk, so he would often request to sleep in my room. One night I was sleeping in my bed and my brother was also asleep. I woke up feeling like I needed to use the bathroom, which was across the hall from my open bedroom door. I felt scared to get out of bed. I don't think it was sleep paralysis, just a fear. I had a sense that there was a man blocking the open door. I say sense because I couldn't fully see him. It was as though my vision was fuzzy. He seemed to wear military attire. No one in my family is in the military. He was just standing there. I tried waking my brother to show him, but he wouldn't wake up. I don't know how long I sat in bed scared to get up when all of a sudden my little sister came sprinting down the hallway, asleep. It woke my brother up, and the figure vanished. I don't know what that experience meant. Fast forward a few years, I started having an interest in the paranormal when I read a book series by Meg Cabot. I think it was called Mediator. It's about a girl who befriends a spirit. It was when I was in middle school, so my memory of the book series isn't super clear. Due to my fascination with the character's paranormal friendship, I wrote a letter inviting a spirit to make contact with me. Over the next few years, many mild things started occurring. I would hear whispering while reading in my room. My siblings and I would call the ghost Bobby after the clothing line Bobby Jack that I used to like at that age. One night as I was laying in bed, I was looking up at the ceiling. I'm not sure if I woke up or if I was trying to sleep. I was looking up and my eyes caught sight of a dark black cloud-like apparition gliding up the wall and onto the ceiling. My eyes followed it. As it slid up the ceiling over my body, I felt a feeling like electricity over me. I didn't know what to think of it. I never thought about it again, and didn't tell anyone. I almost forgot about it until I was listening to a Listener Tale podcast, and someone spoke of a similar experience and sensation of the electrical feeling while seeing a dark cloud. I was shocked when I heard of these similar stories. Our laundry room was in the basement, and when I would get my clothes from the dryer door would shut on its own as I walked back up the stairs. I also felt the need to run up the stairs on random days like someone was on my heels chasing me. I moved into the big basement bedroom when my brother left for college. I had a big Maine Coon mixed cat. One night, I was watching TV on an old box TV without a remote. The TV kept turning off. I'd had this TV for many years and never had it turn off on its own. I would have to walk across the large room to turn it back on. When it would turn off, I was left in complete darkness due to the basement not having windows. This occurred 3 times. When it turned off the 3rd time, my cat started fluffing up his fur as if he was preparing to fight something. He yowled and growled at the edge of the bed. I had never seen him act that way. I couldn't see anything due to being in complete darkness, but knew my cat was obviously uncomfortable with something at the edge of the bed. I was so terrified. I have tried to remember what happened next, but I cannot remember. My light switch was all the way across the room, so maybe I got the courage to turn the light on. I wish I remembered. I moved out of the house when I was older, but my cousin moved into my old room I was in when I would hear the whispering and saw the military man. I was visiting, and she called me over to her room to show me something. Her fluffy cat was fluffed up and growling at something in the corner of the room. The same corner that I saw a black shadow hover over me. She said the cat hated being in the room. She took him out to show me what he would do when walking past the doorway. He crouched to the floor and would nervously look in the room before sprinting to the other side of the hallway. I was freaked out. Nothing has happened since I live with my own family. I'm not mad about that. Please let me know if you've experienced anything like this. 5. I was about 12 or 13 years old when I first experienced a spirit appearance in Cambodia. I say spirit, and not ghost, because I feel there's a difference. Quick background on me. I'm Cambodian, and I was born, raised, and live in California. I am now 40 years old. I had lived in Cambodia for over a year, 95 to 97, due to my mother working out there. This night I'd seen the spirit flew or floated across the second-story window of the house my mom rented. My mother and I just got into an argument. It was nighttime, my mom went to bed, and I stayed up watching Baby's Day Out. Not sure how long it's been since my mom went to bed when I saw the spirit. The second-story window was to my left and the TV was in front of me. I don't know what made me turn my head towards the window. It could have been my peripheral that made me turn my head. When I did, the spirit floated across slowly. It was all black like a shadow. I didn't see any details, just the shape of a human form. One thing that stood out and puzzled me was that the spirit had spikes on the shoulders. I always related those spikes to Shao Kahn from the Mortal Kombat game. As I was looking at the spirit floating across, my first thought was somebody was trying to rob the house. That feeling you get when some stranger is at a place in your home where they shouldn't be. Like seeing robbers in your backyard in the middle of the night. I can't explain the feeling fully. I also want to mention that where the window is at outside, there's really no walkway because that's where the stairs to get to the second story are at. When the spirit had passed, I knew it wasn't some robbers or strangers. I ran to my mom's room and told her straight up what I saw. To my surprise, she believed me without question. She lit incense, and I slept in my mom's room. The next day, I carried on like any normal day. I wasn't scared, probably because it was daytime. My mom was telling the neighbors. I was there listening. One of the neighbors 2 houses down asked my mom if we had just gotten into an argument or something. My mom told her we did. Mind you, I'm listening to the wide conversation, and this lady is confirming everything. The neighbor lady said that the spirit I saw was the good spirit that protects the house from bad spirits. She said her son saw the same thing, no mention of spikes on the shoulders, after they had gotten into an argument. The lady said that the spirit sometimes showed itself to the kids when the kids are in distress. She said that it's the spirit's way of trying to show the kids that everything will be okay. I don't believe that part, but who knows. I don't know what happened after that conversation. My brain only remembers the important part of that time. Fast forward to today. I live a normal life, building muscle cars as a hobby. I'm not traumatized or anything. I know what I saw and that it was confirmed by the neighbors. I only tell people that really know me this story. People that know me know that I don't just tell lies like this or tell lies in general. Even for them, it's hard to fully believe me. I mean, we're talking about spirits and ghosts. If somebody told me they'd seen a ghost and were serious, even myself, I'd be like, well, maybe it was something that you thought was a ghost. Others will never fully grasp the experience of the person who saw the ghost or a spirit. I tried Googling Cambodian spirits, good spirits, protectors, kids seeing ghosts. I tried Googling a lot of keywords. Nothing comes up. Maybe somebody else with the same experience would find better answers. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories episode 400. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and support me on my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. As little as $1 a month really helps. Okay. I don't think we have any other business today, so let's move along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: What is your favourite spooky treat from your childhood? I used to remember, I don't know if they make them anymore, is we used to get these kind of fruit-flavoured gummy spiders. It was kind of like a soft gummy. They were sort of stretchy. And they would be in like a moulded plastic tray. I think they were quite expensive, so it was an occasional treat. Oh, I also used to like, I don't know if this counts as spooky, but you can still buy them, is white chocolate mice. Those were fun. And you used to be able to get skulls with kind of like a strawberry or a raspberry syrup in the eyes. Let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And today's answer comes from Paranormal Stories 398, and I think this is what song have you got stuck in your head right now? And today's answer comes from Annie Northman. Pretty much any song from the Has-Been Hotel soundtrack. And that, of course, has an interesting Beetlejuice the musical connection because Alex Brightman is in both of them. Of course, he's not the current Beetlejuice. I think it's Justin Collette who is Beetlejuice in the touring version. At least at the time of recording he is. Of course, that could change in future. I'm sure there'll be many other Beetlejuices to come. Unless it ends up being one of the understudies. If anyone listening to this is planning to go to see it, it might be the understudy, but the understudies are all quite good. Like, is it Will Bloom? I've seen clips of him, and his take was actually quite good as well. Thank you very much for your answer, Annie Northman. I do need to watch Has-Been Hotel. It is still up on Prime, I think. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.